Hi there. I am Dr. Tiffanie Davis Henry, and I'm the host of the Intimate Details with Dr. Tiff podcast. This is, I believe, the very first episode that you will hear as you're downloading. Obviously, you can listen in any order you choose, but this will be the first episode of the Intimate Details with Dr. Tiff podcast. And I am not interviewing anyone for this episode, although the podcast is meant to be more of an interview style, me interviewing very interesting individuals from all walks, just telling their stories and really helping us all to kind of find our way through this thing called life. But in thinking about everything that I plan to share with you and plan to talk about with my guests, I thought it was really important that we start out doing this podcast by giving you a little insight into who I am, what I do, and why we're doing this podcast to begin with. I think it's kind of unfair to have other people kind of divulge their stories and talk so openly and freely without letting you know why I'm asking the questions that I'm asking, how I got to this place of asking these questions. And this will just kind of give you, I feel like this episode will give you a good indication of really who I am and, get you a little bit more acquainted with me, Dr. Tiff. So a more formal introduction. I am Dr. Tiffanie Davis Henry. I'm originally from North Carolina, born in Raleigh, raised in Charlotte, North Carolina. Moved to Atlanta in 1998 and never looked back. I moved here for graduate school. I have a master's in psychology. I have a doctorate in human sexuality from Widener University up in Pennsylvania. And I have worked for years and years and years as a psychotherapist, as a sex therapist, and also kind of finagled my way into a career in television and media. If I'm being honest, that was probably the goal all along. I think when I was thinking about majors in undergrad, I kind of wanted to do journalism, broadcasting, that kind of thing, and never really, I think at the time, just didn't necessarily have the confidence to do so. The other passion of mine is cooking. And so for whatever reason, culinary school just never seemed like an option. I just kept hearing, I think, 4-year university that I had to go to college, and it never dawned on me that culinary school could also be college for me. So I didn't pursue that, but I think if I had known that, I probably would, because I just, even as a teenager, just loved cooking. So, but what's weird about it all is knowing that, in looking back, knowing that what I wanted to do was something in the realm of television and being on air. Whether I had pursued culinary arts or psychology as I did, I still ended up exactly where I was supposed to be. And I think that's a lesson, right? That no matter what turn you make in life, like, you're going to end up where you're supposed to be. It's like you can fight it and fight it and fight it. And if it's meant to be, it's going to chase you down. Just like this podcast has chased me down. This is an idea that I've been toying with for years. And if you know me or have followed my career and have known me for some time, and if you scour the internet, you can find some very, very old episodes of the Tiffanie Davis Show on Blog Talk Radio. Those are still somewhere in the interweb. You can find those episodes, but that was long time ago. When I really started looking at, like, just talking to people and really interviewing folks and really developing kind of my passion for this work. So, like I said, I'm a psychotherapist. I do run a small private practice. I am not accepting patients, so please don't ask because I'm not taking anybody else on right now. I just don't have the time. In addition to being a psychotherapist who specializes in sexuality issues and sex therapy, I also am an intimacy coordinator for television and film. And that means that when there are scenes involving nudity or simulated sex, or any form of intimacy, really, I am called to come in and support my actors, support the production, in making sure that our actors feel safe, that they are not being asked to do something that they're uncomfortable with, that they understand what they're being asked to do. And if we need to choreograph what that looks like so that it looks very real on camera, that we can do that in a way that feels authentic and real to our audience, but also is respectful to what our actors want. I really do enjoy that work, very much so. And it actually takes up a great deal of my time, which is partially why I am not accepting any more new clients in terms of psychotherapy. So I do that. I also am the founder of a little company called Kinky Green. Kinky Green is my CBD company that we started at the end of, we just hit a full, we started that at the end of 2021. And it was kind of in response, and there's a whole back history to Kinky Green that started a long time ago, but this iteration of it in the realm of CBD actually started at the end of 2021. And we really wanted to alleviate pain and accentuate pleasure in all forms, alleviate pain points in all forms, whether that is physical pain, mental pain, pains in relationship, all of that, but really accentuate pleasure, people finding pleasure in their life, not only physical pleasure in activities, but also within their relationships. So it's funny, CBD kind of is that thing that really levels out the playing field in your life, I believe. And so it's been an amazing journey to kind of relaunch this business in the CBD space. And so we'll talk about that. I'm sure it's going to come up on the podcast more than once. So we'll talk about that as well. Right now, I just really want to take a brief bit of time for you to get to know me. So you'll know where I'm coming from in all of the things. One of the things that you're going to hear me do in this podcast is to go deep, to really ask questions about where people are from, how they were raised, how they got here, how they're navigating their life pre and post pandemic, and how you keep going through adversity. I will tell you, I've taken a lot of pivots in my life, professionally and personally. And I think one of the greatest challenges for me that most people don't even know about, and these revelations will come throughout the season of this podcast, but one of the greatest revelations that I don't talk about very much is it happened to me after, well, there are two that I really want to share, I think. But the first one happened after my daughter was born. So I have an 8-year-old daughter whom is just the light of my life. I think everybody that meets her, I mean, I feel I'm biased, obviously, but I feel as though she just lights up the room and radiates, man. She's amazing. But when I had her, like, mommyhood, it threw me for a loop. And I feel like many new moms or moms in general will understand this. I waited a little bit later. I was in my late 30s when I had her. And up until then, like, I had done a lot, right? I had traveled the world. My husband and I got it in. We traveled everywhere. We had fun. At one point I moved to New York. That was when I was hosting The Revolution for ABC. So like it was a whirlwind. We were living our lives. We were having a great time. And, we had decided, once the revolution was canceled, we decided, okay, we've put it off long enough. It's time to really start trying to have a family. I'd spent my adult years setting goals, deciding what I wanted to do and doing it. Like, it was just that easy. I decided I wanted to get a master's. I moved to Atlanta. I worked for 2.5 years and probably held like 3 jobs at a time. And I did it. I had the master's. I decided I wanted a doctorate in human sexuality because I wanted to be a sex therapist. I didn't want to move to Philly, but that was where the program was. So I stayed in Atlanta and I flew back and forth to take classes. Like, it was ridiculous, but it was what I decided I wanted to do. And I just did it. There was never a time where I allowed myself to really consider obstacles. It was just do it. You're going to do it. This is what you want. So you're going to do it. And that is kind of how I lived my life up until that point. I'm lucky enough to be partnered with and married to someone who supports my crazy visions and dreams and doesn't stand in the way. And he just truly is amazing in that way, and that he supports every harebrained scheme that I have. So, when we decided to have our daughter, or just have kids in general, it was, okay, we're going to do this. No big deal. Not anything that we need to like overly, plan about. Like, we can do this. People our age do it all the time. Like, everybody else has done it. Not a big deal. It's not that we didn't think it was a big deal, like, to actually raise a human. But we figured we could do this. Like, we both have doctoral degrees. Like, we're smart. We can handle this, right? Oh, so this was the first time, having a child was the first time in my life that I set out to do something and it didn't go as planned. It wasn't as A plus B equals C as I thought it was going to be or should be. The stars didn't actually align in the way that I anticipated, if you know what I mean. My pregnancy was very easy. I didn't have any cravings. I didn't have morning sickness. Like, it was pregnancy was a breeze for me. And I know not everybody shares that story. But it was pretty simple. Everything was as it was. We did our prenatal classes. Jason went to Jason's my husband, went to his man groups before I had the baby. And everything was fine. We had decided, we're going to do a vaginal birth. And, that was probably one of the last decisions that we thought we made that it just wasn't happening. So I go into labor and go to the hospital and everything. And I'm there. My parents are there. Jason's there, of course. And I'm in labor, like the contractions are coming and all of that. And I was in labor. I think it was 18 hours of labor, 18 hours of labor. It was a long time, right? So 18 hours of labor, and I hadn't really dilated very much. I think they ended up having to even break the water for me, right? Because it wasn't happening. So I was in labor 18 hours, and finally my doctor came in and was just like, listen, I'm about to go home. I'm about to be off of my shift. We can do a C-section right now and I could deliver this baby, or you could still, you can kick it. You can kick it a couple more hours if you want to, but it's not looking great. And, what we didn't want to risk is infection to me, infection to the baby, things going wrong because the labor had been so any kind of complication, really, because I'd been in labor for so long. So having a C-section was not something that I planned for. It was absolutely not part of the plan. And if you listen to the teaser that we did for this podcast, you'll know A lot of things in my life don't go as planned. They work out, but they don't necessarily go as planned. So that was the first time where I had like really planned something and knew what was going to, like I had prepped, I had read, I had done all of the things. And now a choice was being taken away from me. I didn't feel like I had a choice. Like once we start going for C-section, like everybody starts to come in, they start doing the shots and you start getting prepped for that. You're going into major surgery, which mentally I had not planned for. We had gone to all these prenatal classes and every time they talked about C-section, I had turned my brain off, child. I had said, this is not what I'm doing. I'm not here for that. I don't need useless information. I am not going to listen to what they're saying because that is not my path. Okay. That's not what I'm doing. But here I am getting this C-section. And so I remember being on that table and closing my eyes and telling myself, you cannot be here. Like, Tiffanie, you cannot physically be in this room. You have to dissociate. You have to detach because it was just very overwhelming. A friend of mine came to visit me once I was home and she named it for me. She said, you know, what you went through was trauma. Like that was a traumatic experience. And as a therapist, like it was crazy to hear her say that, but it was exactly what it was. We think of trauma as, you know, some sort of abuse situation or some traumatic event that happens, a car accident or being off to war or, you know, an abusive situation or, you know, something like that. But trauma wears many hats and it looks very different in different situations. And for me in that moment, I was experiencing some sort of trauma. I was able to advocate for myself. I don't want to give that impression, but I did not have control over what was going on. Things were happening to me that needed to happen in those moments, but I just felt out of control. And that was really tough for me. Post childbirth, we got through it. But post childbirth, the weeks, even while I was in the hospital, I remember my agent called at the time and she was asking if I wanted to do a particular project and it was going to be like in 2 weeks. I would have to fly to Chicago. I know what it was. It was Steve Harvey. I was supposed to fly to Chicago to do a taping of Steve Harvey's show. And it would be 2 weeks post birth. Actually 1 week, because I did go in like 2 to 3 weeks. But it was like the next week. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I can go. And I remember Jason and my mom kind of looking at me like, you can't fly to Chicago after having a C-section. Now, this was like one day, it might not have even been a full day, like post having the baby. So the drugs that they give you, if you've never had a baby, and even if you have, the drugs that they give you, they stay in your system for a minute. So I wasn't even feeling the full impact of what this C-section had done to my body. So I'm saying I can do anything. Like, this is not a problem. I'll pre-board. I'll get somebody to help me put my bag up or whatever. Like, it's a quick overnight trip. No problem. Yeah, I'm breastfeeding, but I'll pump and I'll do all these things. It's going to be great. No problem. I'm going. And they were like, you are not going anywhere. You just had a C-section. You cannot just jump on a plane and travel. And they were right. Like, as the meds wore off, I could barely even go to the bathroom by myself. It was a mess. And so that was the biggest pivot for me. One of the biggest pivots up until that time where things just were not going as planned. And as a new mom, motherhood was not what I thought it was going to be. It, you know, your friends prepare you for, oh, you better get your sleep now. You're not going to be able to sleep. It's not, you know, you're not going to be able to sleep. And like, I've been in college, right? I've had a master's, I've got a doctorate. Like, I've pulled all-nighters before. The difference between the all-nighters that you pull as a college student or as a single person clubbing at night with your friends is those types of all-nighters are by choice. You choose and you pregame, like you might take a nap during the day so you can be up a little bit later. Like it's a choice related activity. Like you choose to stay up. With a new baby, it is you put the baby down and then 2 minutes later it cries because you put it down. Like you can't get restful sleep. You can't sleep well. You're not eating well. You're not showering in a consistent manner. Like nothing is your own anymore. And so those first couple days and weeks were a lot. And I thought, my husband thought, like we both thought, like, what did we get ourselves into? Looking back on it, thank God we made it through. It was not the end of the world. And life continued to get better and we pulled through, we moved on. But the next thing that came, the next kind of gut punch that came for me was in about month 4 or 5. At this point, I had booked a nighttime talk show in LA called All About Sex for TLC. And I was flying back and forth to LA to shoot it. And in January of that year, Sky, my daughter, was about 4 or 5 months old at that time, still breastfeeding, and when I would travel, I would pump and while I was in the hotel and then bring everything back and all of that. But I started to notice that I was having trouble walking at that point. I was having trouble, just like my mobility was just kind of off, but I was finally doing, what I wanted to do. I had a fantastic job and show working with just hilariously funny people talking about sex, which I obviously love doing. And something was going on with my leg and I just didn't know what it was. It was just this weird numbness and tingling. I couldn't control it in the way that I usually would. Talk with my doctor about it. He sent me to a neurologist, and what we found out was I had an inflammation in my spine that was brought on by an autoimmune disorder that was brought on by childbirth. It was something that probably had been dormant in my system for a long time, but because of all of the trauma internally that I had been through with baby, with the C-section, with everything, it just kind of triggered it. And that is something that I hadn't planned for, hadn't anticipated. And the mobility issues got to a point where I couldn't no longer drive. I could get myself from A to B. Like I could maneuver walking around the house. It would take me a lot longer. But I could not trust driving and things like that. So the neurologist had a nurse come to the home and she did steroid treatments with me for like IV steroids for like 3 days straight. I was on steroids for like 8 months, started to improve and, really started to improve greatly. But by June of that year, I started having shortness of breath. Now, I am based in Atlanta. I live in Atlanta and June, July is hot. Okay. It is a firestorm in Atlanta in the summertime. So it's not uncommon for people to sit in their houses in the air condition. But I have an infant. I also at the time had a dog. And one of the things that I would do for exercise every single day was take them out to walk, of course, right? Got to walk the dog. Got to take my baby outside. And one day I'm walking and I noticed I was getting really short of breath. And I felt as though maybe it's the heat. Like it's just hot. And I got a baby, I had my Bjorn. So I had her tied to me, have the dog, I'm walking. It was a lot. So I just decided, you know what? I just won't do these walks anymore like I usually do. Not a big deal. This went on for a couple weeks where I was just like, gosh, I'm just feeling out of breath. Like, what is this? Like, maybe it's the steroids. Maybe it's, all of these things. I had talked to my doctor about it and we called a pulmonologist. They couldn't get me in for a month. Not, I was just, it's weird. It's not good, but I can muscle through it. Right. I had a stretch of engagements that I had to do, like within that 2-week period, where in one like 4-day period within that time period, I flew from Atlanta to LA to Atlanta to Turks and Caicos, and then back to Atlanta. And that was over 4 days. All that time, I'm having the shortness of breath. When I was in LA, I called my neurologist and said, like, listen, I don't think the steroids are working. I think that something is going on. Like, and he said, yeah, we need to get you in to see a pulmonologist. I'm going to make some calls. And he and my doctor got together. They made calls, got me into a pulmonologist like a week after. I had an appointment a week out as opposed to a month out. So I was like, okay, I can hold this together for a week. I did not make that time. I almost passed out walking up the stairs with my daughter. And just remember laying her down on the bed and me laying on the bed as well. And just holding on to her ankle so that she wouldn't roll off the bed. My husband was not at home at the time, but I was just like, I just have to hold on to her so she doesn't fall, and just make it until he gets home. He gets home, we go to the hospital. And again, I packed my own bag to get to the hospital while I'm short of breath. I refused to let him take me up to the door. Like, we parked the car and I walked. We had to stop in the middle of the parking lot because I needed to catch my breath. I get there and, they take me straight back because, I can't breathe. And the doctor tells me, like, you're not going home. You're going upstairs to ICU. You have a lot of blood clots in your lungs. And of course, me, the thinker, right? I'm like, well, how many? As if that mattered. He was like, a lot. Okay, a lot. And I was like, well, how many is a lot? He's like, we stopped counting, at 6. And so when I finally did, and the pulmonologist that I had in the hospital, I ended up seeing her afterwards or whatever. And we talked about it. And she's just like, you're incredibly lucky. This was a wake up call. I can't even talk. This is a wake up call, but also a turning point for me in my life. It was a time, that week that I spent in the hospital was a time for me to really reflect on what was important to me, to acknowledge the things that I wasn't strong at and didn't want to do, but was kind of forcing myself to do. It was a time for me to identify things that weren't necessary for me, for my family, for my happiness. And it was a time for me to get rid of some things. Had a lot of time in that hospital. And so I did that, and I started moving in a way that really, I think, was a lot more purposeful. I realized after that, like, I literally could have died. And I'm so thankful that I get to see, life, get to experience life, get to still be here to hold on to my daughter as much as I can, even though she will wiggle away from me if she can. But she's, she and my husband and my family mean the world to me. And that is why I do the work that I do. I love helping people to realize, because I think in that moment, I realized, and I'm still doing the work, right? I realized why I'm here. I was reaffirmed, I think, with why I'm here. I'm very clear that the work that I do with individuals is super important to them, to me, and to why I'm here, why I'm still here. I love helping people to figure out their own why, their purpose, the thing that they need to figure out in order to move forward, what's holding them back, whether that be in relationships, whether that be in their job, whether that be spiritually. I'm here for that. I'm here for that. I know that I'm a firm believer in God, right? And I know that oftentimes he speaks through me. I know that because, I've done tons of shows, right? I've hosted shows. I've been an expert guest on so many shows, and I've interviewed tons of people. And I know that, when other people listen and see those interviews, I've had so many people come up to me and say, this was that made a difference. What you said to her made a difference. What you said to him made a difference. And what I heard you say was ... And sometimes what follows are things that I do not remember saying. I don't remember saying it at all, but I'm okay with that because I understand that sometimes God speaks through us. And that sometimes what we are experiencing, just like everything that I experienced after having Sky, the things that I experienced during childbirth and all of that, sometimes our experiences aren't about us at all. Sometimes the things that we say, the things that we do, the things that we go through aren't about us at all. They're about the people that are around us that need to see it from a different perspective. They need to hear about it in a different tone, in a different voice. I don't believe that we are here for us. I believe we are here for others. And that's what I hope you get out of this podcast. I'm having conversations with people from all walks. Some may be famous, some may not be. Some you may never have heard of before, and some you may have definitely heard about and are curious as to how they did what they did. I'm interviewing these people because I want you to understand their story and get from it what you need to get from it. What you end up hearing may not, on the surface, be what they intended when it comes out of their mouths, but it may be exactly what you need to hear in this moment in order to move forward in your life. Intimate Details is not a podcast about sex per se. I'm sure because it's me, right? Because it's me, sex is going to come up in conversation. It's probably going to come up in conversation a lot. True intimacy is emotional closeness and physical closeness, right? It's where we have both of those things. True intimacy in our relationships, emotional closeness and physical closeness. We're going to get emotionally close with our guests. We may talk about some of the physical closeness, but what I want to do is familiarize you with the intimate details of their lives so that you can connect the dots in a way that helps to propel you forward. That is what the Intimate Details with Dr. Tiff podcast is all about. That's what I'm about. And I can't wait for you to go on this journey with me. Podcasting is something that I've ran from for years and years and years, ever since those old days in Blog Talk Radio. It's something that I've wanted to do, but I didn't want to do it the way that I used to do it with the old show. I also have had so many different iterations of my career in television that this was not the thing that I wanted to do. If I'm being honest, it's not the thing that I want to do now, right? I do want to do this podcast, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. But ultimately, this is not my end game. That's not to say that if this is where I'm supposed to be, because we know that we can't run from things that are meant to be. If this is where I'm supposed to be, this is where I'm going to be. But in my mind, in my plan, I'm supposed to be elsewhere. But this is where I am today. This is where I am today. So as I go through my own journey, you're going to walk it with me. You're going to walk it like I talk it, or talk it like I walk it. How does that go? We're going to do this thing together, and we'll see where we end up. We'll see where we end up. So I thank you so much for joining me today. I thank you so much for joining me tomorrow. As you listen to future episodes of this podcast, I hope that you'll take notes. I hope that you'll ask questions. I hope that you'll follow me on Instagram and Facebook. On Instagram is at Dr. Tiffanie TV. That is at DrTiffanie TV. Okay. And I hope that you'll follow me there. We will be posting the episodes in video form on YouTube, and you can listen wherever you listen to podcasts. As things change, as things grow, I'll continue to update you. And I think that's it. So I want you to ask questions, do comments. You can do that on Instagram. You can do that on Facebook. I want to build a community and hear from you as to, what your questions are, what you feel, what you hear, what you learn, what you see, and how you grow. So I thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to many, many episodes in the future. Thank you for joining us on Intimate Details with Dr. Tiff.